The bullet that killed Garrett Reeves did not sound like the movies. It did not crack through the air with dramatic purpose or announce itself with a whistle of incoming death. It was quieter than that, almost polite. A soft punch of displaced air followed by the wet smack of lead meeting bone at 2,300 feet per second. Caleb Thorne heard it from 17 feet away, close enough to see the small red mist that appeared where his best friend's temple used to be, close enough to watch Garrett's knees buckle in that strange puppet with cut strings way that human bodies collapse when the brain stops sending signals, close enough to catch him before he hit the dust of that Kandahar rooftop, not close enough to save him. The Afghan sun was white-hot overhead, turning the world into a bleached-out photograph. Caleb's hands were red, his tactical gloves soaked through in seconds. Garrett's eyes were still open, still seeing something, though Caleb knew that was just biology. The body takes time to understand it's dead. Target is not hostile, Garrett had said into his radio maybe 30 seconds before. His voice had that edge it always got when something did not add up. I repeat, target is not hostile. We have eyes on a Western asset making a handoff with local contractors. Looks like Argent is cleaning house. Argent, a code name from the old files, a ghost story the intelligence community whispered about in classified briefings. Caleb had thought it was exactly that, a ghost. Then the scope glint, a flash of sunlight off glass from a building 300 meters out. Caleb had started to turn, started to shout a warning, started to do something, anything. But the universe does not wait for human reflexes. The shot was perfect, professional, not the work of insurgents with AK-47s and inshallah. This was precision. This was assassination. Caleb held his friend while the light went out of his eyes, held him while the radio crackled with confused chatter from their unit, held him while his own mind tried and failed to process what had just happened. They were supposed to be hunting terrorists. They were supposed to be the good guys. Nobody was supposed to be hunting them. Garrett's last words were not dramatic or meaningful. He did not have any final wisdom or requests. He just made a small, surprised sound, like he had forgotten something at home and just remembered. Then nothing. The medevac came. The after-action reports were filed. The official story was written and sealed and classified. Garrett Reeves, Navy SEAL, killed in action by enemy sniper fire. A hero, a warrior, a casualty of war. The truth died with him on that rooftop. Or so Caleb thought. 2 years later, Caleb Thorne lived in a place that smelled like cigarette smoke and defeat. The motel room in Apache Junction, Arizona, had walls the color of nicotine stains and carpet that crunched under his boots no matter how many times a management claimed they had cleaned it. The neon sign outside his window buzzed all night. Vacancy. Always vacancy. Nobody stayed at a place like this unless they had run out of better options. Caleb had run out of everything. The nightmares came with mechanical regularity. Same time every night. 3:17 in the morning. He would jerk awake with Garrett's blood still warm on his hands, reaching for a rifle that was not there, searching for threats in a room that held nothing but empty bottles and the ghosts he had carried home from the desert. The VA gave him pills, small orange bottles with his name spelled wrong on the label and warnings about operating heavy machinery. He took them for a while. They made the dreams fuzzy, but did not make them stop. They just turned the horror into something distant and waterlogged, like watching a snuff film through frosted glass. He stopped taking them. Better to face the nightmare sharp and clean than to wade through that pharmaceutical fog. The discharge papers said honorable. The medical evaluation said PTSD with major depressive features. The bank account said $247. The mirror said something worse. It showed a man who had aged a decade in 2 years. Hollow cheeks, dark circles, eyes that had seen too much and could not forget any of it. 35 years old. Should have been in his prime. Should have been building something. A career, a family, a life. Instead, he was a ghost haunting a motel room, waiting for whatever came next. And if nothing came, that was fine too. The only reason he was still breathing was sleeping on the floor beside his bed. Shadow. The German Shepherd was 4 years old, 85 pounds of muscle and loyalty, and something Caleb could not quite name. Intelligence, maybe. Or memory. The dog had been Garrett's, his partner, his friend, his brother in everything but species. If anything happens to me, Garrett had said once over beers at a bar in Virginia Beach, you take care of my boy. He's smarter than most officers I've met, probably smarter than me. Caleb had laughed, promised, the kind of promise you make when you don't think you'll ever have to keep it. Then Kandahar happened. The Navy shipped Shadow home in a crate with Garrett's personal effects, a footlocker of clothes, some photos, a St. Christopher medal his mother had given him, and one living, breathing piece of Garrett that refused to believe his handler was gone. Shadow had sat by the airport baggage claim for 6 hours waiting for Garrett to come pick him up. Security finally called the emergency contact number on his collar. Caleb drove through the night to get him. The dog looked at Caleb with eyes that asked a question humans could not answer. Where is he? Why is not he here? When is he coming back? Caleb had no answers. He could barely take care of himself, but Garrett had asked, and some promises you keep even when they are killing you. For the first month, Shadow would not eat, would not play, just lay by the door of Caleb's apartment waiting. Veterans understand that kind of vigil, the waiting for someone who is never coming home. Slowly, painfully, they learn to exist together. Two broken things trying to figure out how to be whole. Shadow would nudge Caleb's hand away from the whiskey bottle, would press his weight against Caleb's legs when the shaking started, would bark sharp and insistent when Caleb stared at the pills too long. The dog saved his life, multiple times, in ways both obvious and subtle, and now 2 years after Kandahar, Shadow was doing something strange. It started 3 weeks ago. Every morning the same routine. Caleb would clip on the leash for their walk, and Shadow would pull. Not toward the usual route, not toward the desert scrubland where they normally wandered, toward town, toward a specific place. The RV storage lot on the east side of Apache Junction was a graveyard for dreams. Rows of rusted trailers and broken-down motorhomes, each one a monument to someone's abandoned plan. Winnebagos with flat tires. Prowlers with shattered windows. Shasta canned hams that had not moved since the Reagan administration. Shadow pulled Caleb to the same spot every single day, the back corner of Lot D, a 1972 Airstream Sovereign that looked like it had been through a war and lost. The aluminum skin was pitted and gray oxidized past any hope of polish. Rust tears streaked down from every rivet. The windows were either cracked or missing, entirely replaced with plywood and duct tape. The tires were flat, dry, rotted, probably had not held air since the Clinton years. A faded for sale sign, sun-bleached to near illegibility, was taped to the door. It was a wreck, a piece of junk, a lost cause. Shadow sat in front of it like it was the most important thing in the world. The first day, Caleb thought it was random. Dogs fixate on strange things, smells, sounds, whatever passes for important in the canine brain. He pulled Shadow away. They went home. The second day, same thing. Shadow planted his feet, refused to budge, stared at that rotting trailer like it held answers to questions Caleb could not hear. By the third day, Caleb started to notice details. The way Shadow's ears were forward, alert, not aggressive, not afraid, focused. The way his tail was not wagging but was not still either, a slow, deliberate movement. The way he whined soft and low, a sound Caleb had only heard a few times before. Usually when Shadow knew something, Caleb did not. For 3 weeks they made the pilgrimage. Every morning, 7 o'clock. The dog would pull Caleb to the Airstream sit-stare whine. Caleb would stand there feeling ridiculous, wondering if he was losing his mind along with everything else. The old man who ran the storage lot started to recognize them. Weathered face like saddle leather, flannel shirt regardless of temperature, boots held together with duct tape and stubbornness. "That's your dog?" he asked one morning, wheezing out the words around a cigarette. "Yeah, he likes that old Airstream. Apparently, been trying to sell that piece of garbage for 2 years. Previous owner died. Estate don't care. Just want it gone." He squinted at Caleb through the smoke. "You interested?" Caleb almost laughed. Interested? In a 30-ton paperweight, in a metal coffin on wheels, in something that would cost thousands to restore and still be worthless at the end. "No," he said. Shadow whined. The old man shrugged. "Well, she's still here if you change your mind. Make me an offer, any offer. I just want her off my lot." That night, Caleb could not sleep. The usual nightmares came and went, but between them and the quiet hours before dawn, he kept thinking about the Airstream, about the way Shadow looked at it, the way he sat there patient and certain like he knew something no human could understand. Garrett used to say Shadow had a sixth sense, could smell fear, could sense danger before it arrived, could tell when someone was lying just by watching their body language. Military working dogs are trained for that. Bomb detection, enemy combatants, threat assessment. But this felt different. This felt like Shadow knew something about that specific trailer, about what was inside it, about why it mattered. Caleb told himself he was being insane, projecting meaning onto random animal behavior, looking for purpose in a universe that did not care. But the thought would not leave him alone. The next morning he checked his bank account. $247. Rent was due in 5 days. Food cost money. Gas cost money. Everything cost money he did not have. Shadow pulled him to the Airstream, sat, stared, whined. The old man was in his office, a shipping container converted into something barely habitable. Coffee pot on a hot plate, girly calendar from 2003. The smell of motor oil and Old Spice. "How much for the Airstream?" Caleb heard himself ask. The old man looked up surprised. "The sovereign son, that thing's a project. Needs total restoration. Probably cost you 10 grand just to make it livable." "How much?" A long pause. The old man studied Caleb, saw the military bearing, the hollow eyes, the way Shadow sat perfectly still at his heel. Maybe he saw something that reminded him of himself years ago when the world still made sense. $100, he said finally, "and you tow it off my lot today." Caleb had $147 after rent. He would be broke, completely tapped out, living on nothing, for a piece of junk that made no sense. Shadow looked up at him, those dark eyes, Garrett's eyes in a way, asking him to trust, to take a leap, to believe that sometimes the illogical choice is the right one. "Deal," Caleb said. The old man took the cash, 520s wrinkled and soft from being folded too many times. He handed over a pink slip with the previous owner's name scratched out and Caleb scrawled in. "Caleb Thorne. She's all yours," the old man said. "God help you." Caleb borrowed a trailer hitch and some chains, backed his ancient Ford F-150 up to the Airstream's tongue. The truck groaned when he connected the weight. The Airstream's suspension squeaked like it was surprised to be moving. Shadow jumped into the passenger seat before Caleb could stop him. Tail wagging now, actually wagging, first time in months. They pulled out of the storage lot at 5 miles per hour. The trailer swayed and rattled. Every bolt sounded ready to give up. Every weld screamed in protest. People stared as they passed. A wreck of a truck pulling a wreck of a trailer. Two broken things going nowhere together. Caleb found a spot on the edge of town. BLM land. Nobody owned it. Nobody cared what you did there. As long as you did not start a fire or leave trash, the desert was yours. He unhitched the Airstream in a flat space between two Joshua trees. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors that hurt to look at. Oranges and purples and reds. The kind of beauty that makes you angry when you are grieving, because how dare the world be beautiful when everything is broken? Shadow was already at the Airstream's door, pawing at it. Caleb took a breath, realized his hands were shaking, not from withdrawal or PTSD, from anticipation, like opening a present, like Pandora's box, like maybe, just maybe, something inside that rotting metal shell might matter. He pulled the door handle. It resisted, rust and time, then gave way with a groan that sounded almost human. The smell hit him first: mildew, decay, mouse droppings, the particular stink of things left to rot in the desert heat. The interior was worse than the outside, upholstery torn and spilling its guts, countertops warped and water-stained, cabinets hanging at drunken angles, a fine layer of dust and desiccated insects covering every surface. It was a tomb, a wreck, a mistake. Shadow pushed past Caleb and walked straight to the dinette area, sat, stared at the floor, whined. "Yeah, buddy," Caleb said quietly. "I know. I bought a piece of junk." But Shadow was not looking at the wreckage. He was looking at something specific, a section of plywood flooring beneath the dinette seating. His paw scratched at it. Persistent, insistent. Caleb knelt, ran his hands over the floor. At first, nothing, just warped wood and grime. Then he felt it, a seam, too straight to be natural, too precise to be damage, a hidden panel. His heart rate picked up, muscle memory from 100 breaching operations. The feeling when you know you are about to find something, when the mission shifts from routine to significant. He found a gap, wedged his fingers in, pulled. The panel came up with a crack of old glue. Underneath was a compartment, maybe 2 feet square, lined with oilcloth to keep out moisture. And inside that oilcloth, wrapped like a gift from the past, was a package. Caleb lifted it out with hands that did not feel like his own. The oilcloth was stiff but intact. Ay, samantin. He unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a steel box, no bigger than a hardback book, military gray, no visible lock, just a series of interlocking dials on the front, each one etched with a constellation. Orion, Ursa Major, Cassiopeia, Lyra. Beside it, wrapped separately, was a journal, leather-bound, water-stained but readable. The initials on the cover were tooled into the hide in fading gold. N. B. Caleb opened the journal with the delicacy of a man handling live ordnance. The handwriting inside was precise, careful. The hand of someone who understood that words could be evidence. The first page had a name and a date. Nathaniel Brennan, March 17, 1968. Caleb had never heard the name, but something about it felt weighted, important, like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples he could not yet see. Shadow leaned against his leg, warm and solid and certain. The dog had known. Somehow, impossibly, he had known this was here. Known it mattered. Known Caleb needed to find it. Caleb sat in the wreckage of his $100 mistake and began to read. The hardware store in Apache Junction looked like it had been there since before the town existed. Faded sign, wooden floors that creaked, the smell of sawdust and WD-40, aisles stocked with the kind of practical things people needed when they were fixing instead of buying new. Caleb had driven there in his truck, leaving the Airstream behind like a secret he was not ready to share. He needed materials, cleaning supplies, basic tools. The journal had occupied his thoughts for 2 days straight, but the physical reality of the trailer could not be ignored. It was filth and rot and structural damage. Before he could solve ancient mysteries, he had to make the place habitable. The woman behind the counter was maybe 32, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and hands that looked like they knew which end of a hammer to hold. She glanced up when the bell over the door chimed. "Help you find something cleaning supplies," Caleb said. "Industrial strength, and probably some wood filler, and sandpaper. A lot of sandpaper." She studied him with the frank assessment of someone who had seen plenty of men walk in with big plans and small budgets. "Restoration project." "Something like that. What are you working on? Old Airstream. 1972. Sovereign. Her eyebrows went up. That's a project, all right. Those are good bones, though. If you can get past the rot, that's the idea. She moved from behind the counter, started pulling items off shelves with the efficiency of someone who had done this dance 1,000 times, heavy-duty degreaser, mold killer, sponges that looked industrial enough to scrub a crime scene. She stacked it all on the counter without asking questions. You know what you're doing? She asked. No, Caleb admitted. But I'm good at figuring things out, a small smile. Military, how'd you guess? The way you stand, the haircut, the fact that you said you're good at figuring things out instead of good at this specific thing. She rang up the supplies. My dad was Army, 82nd Airborne. He could fix anything. Never took no for an answer. Smart man, stubborn man. There's a difference. She bagged the items. That'll be 63.40. Caleb handed over 320s and a 5. His last cash until the disability check hit next week. She gave him change and a receipt and something else. A business card. Claire Whitman, owner/operator. You need advice on the Airstream, call me, she said. I've helped a few folks with vintage trailer restorations. Know the common pitfalls. Appreciate it. And if you're looking for parts, there's a scrap yard on the south side. Guy named Hank. Tell him Claire sent you. He'll treat you fair. Caleb pocketed the card, nodded, gathered his bags, and headed for the door. Shadow was waiting in the truck, patient as always. Through the store window, Caleb saw Claire watching him leave. Not with romantic interest. With the cautious curiosity of someone who recognized a fellow traveler in the land of broken things. The scrapyard was exactly what Caleb expected. Acres of organized chaos, stacks of rusted metal, mountains of car parts, row after row of things that used to be useful and might be again if you knew where to look. The man in the office was old in the way that military veterans are old, not from years but from weight. Everything he had carried, everything he had seen. He looked up when Caleb's shadow fell across the doorway. Help you. Looking for parts. Vintage Airstream restoration. Claire at the hardware store said you might have what I need. The old man's eyes sharpened. Claire sent you, sir. A grunt that might have been approval. What year Airstream? 72 Sovereign. Ambitious. The old man stood, slowly, like his bones were arguing with the decision. He was maybe 68, 70, gray hair cut military short, flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, forearms like bridge cables. Name's Hank Morrison. You got a name, Caleb Thorne. Hank stuck out a hand. Caleb shook it. The grip was still strong, still testing. Hank's eyes lingered on Caleb's face, reading the same things Claire had read. The bearing, the shadows, Navy. Yeah. SEALs, if I had to guess. Caleb did not confirm or deny, just held the old man's gaze. Hank nodded. Come on, I'll show you what I've got. They walked the rows together, Hank pointing out aluminum sheeting window frames, vintage hardware. Shadow followed at Caleb's heel, and Hank glanced down at the dog with something like recognition. Working dog was. Lost his handler. Caleb's jaw tightened. Yeah. Hank stopped walking, turned to face Caleb fully. I'm going to tell you something, son, and you can take it or leave it. But I've been where you are. The anger, the guilt, the feeling like you should have died instead. You don't know where I am. Gulf War, 1991. Operation Desert Storm. I lost my entire squad to friendly fire. A 10 Warthog pilot got coordinates wrong. Turned my brothers into pink mist. I was 50 meters away, far enough to live, close enough to hear them scream. Hank's voice was steady, factual. The way men talk about trauma when they have processed it down to its component parts. Took me 15 years to stop wishing I had been standing in the wrong spot that day. Caleb said nothing. Could not. The air felt heavy. I'm telling you this because that Airstream you're fixing, it's not about the trailer. It's about having something to do with your hands while your head sorts itself out. And that's fine. That's good even. But don't do it alone. You need someone who understands the work. Hank started walking again. I'll help you, no charge for labor. You pay for parts. And in return, you show up here 3 times a week. We work together. You learn. I teach. Dio, Caleb's throat felt tight. Why? Because nobody helped me. And I don't want to watch another young man go through it the way I did. Hank stopped at a pile of aluminum sheets, kicked one with his boot. These should work for your exterior patches. We'll cut them to size together. For the first time in 2 years, Caleb felt something other than grief or numbness. It was not hope, not yet, but it was possibility, the faint outline of a path forward. Deal, he said quietly. Shadow sat between them, tail wagging slow and steady, like he had known all along. The nights were the worst, when the work stopped and the silence started, when there was nothing to do but sit in the wreckage of the Airstream and try to make sense of Nathaniel Brennan's journal. Caleb read by flashlight. The Airstream had no power, no water, no amenities beyond 4 walls and a roof that mostly did not leak. He had cleared enough space to unfold a camp cot. Shadow slept on the floor beside him, a warm presence in the dark. The journal was dense, written in a careful code that was not quite code. Brennan never stated anything directly. Every entry was veiled, careful. The work of a man who knew his writings might be discovered and needed plausible deniability. Entry after entry detailed dead drops in Vienna, coded messages in Berlin, meetings with assets who had names like Ghost and Prophet and Cardinal. The language was precise but obtuse, like reading poetry where every metaphor was tactical. But one name kept appearing, always in quotes, always with a sense of unease. Argent, the same name Garrett had spoken on that Kandahar rooftop, the same code that had gotten him killed. Caleb had thought it was a ghost story, an urban legend among intelligence operatives. But here was Brennan writing about Argent in 1968, tracking financial irregularities, following money trails through shell companies and offshore accounts, noting discrepancies in mission funding, and suspecting treason. The later entries grew darker, more urgent. Brennan believed Argent was not a single person but a network, a conspiracy reaching into the highest levels of American intelligence. People who used the Cold War as cover to enrich themselves, who traded lives for profit, who eliminated anyone who got too close to the truth. Brennan wrote about bearer bonds, untraceable currency, a cash worth tens of millions meant to fund deep cover operatives in case of a Soviet first strike, money that could never be audited, never tracked, perfect for theft if you had the access and the conscience to steal from your own side. He believed Argent planned to steal it all. The final entries were instructions, coded directions, clues hidden in anecdotes about navigating by stars and childhood memories of his father's watchmaking shop. Brennan was creating a map, a trail of breadcrumbs for someone to follow. For his son, Caleb realized. Brennan was leaving this for a child he mentioned but never named, a boy who would inherit this burden if his father disappeared. The journal ended abruptly, mid-sentence, like Brennan had heard something, footsteps, a door opening, the moment when you stop writing and start running. No more entries after March 1975. Caleb sat in the darkness holding a dead man's final words, feeling the weight of something bigger than he understood. Argent, Brennan, the bearer bonds, and somehow impossibly a connection to Garrett's death nearly 50 years later. The steel box sat on the dinette table, still locked, still silent. The constellations on its face seemed to mock him in the flashlight beam. He needed to open it. The journal contained clues, references to celestial navigation, stories about Brennan's father teaching him to repair pocket watches with their delicate, precise mechanisms, instructions hidden in nostalgia. But Caleb was exhausted, the kind of tired that sleep does not fix. He set the journal aside, Stretched out on the cot, Shadow shifted closer, pressed his weight against Caleb's leg through the sleeping bag. He knew Caleb said quietly to the dog, "Garrett, he found out about Argent. That's why they killed him." Shadow's ears twitched, listening, understanding in whatever way dogs understand when their humans are in pain. "You brought me here because this is the answer. Because you knew I needed to finish what he started." The dog sighed, a deep, contented sound, like finally his mission made sense to the slow human. Caleb closed his eyes. The nightmares would come. They always did. But tonight, mixed with the blood and the gunfire and Garrett's surprised expression, there was something else. A question taking shape, a purpose forming in the darkness. Who was Argent? And what did they fear enough to kill for? The work became a rhythm. 3 days a week at Hank's scrapyard, learning to cut aluminum, to rivet properly, to understand the architecture of a vintage Airstream. The rest of the time at the trailer itself, ripping out rotted wood, scrubbing decades of grime, slowly, painfully revealing the bones of something that might be beautiful again. Hank taught with the patience of a man who understood that fixing things was fixing yourself. He did not ask about Caleb's nightmares, did not pry into the shadows that sometimes made Caleb's hands shake, just showed him how to work, how to measure twice and cut once, how to take pride in small victories. The old man had his own ghosts. Caleb could see them in the way Hank would sometimes stop mid-sentence, stare at nothing, return from wherever he had gone with a shake of his head and a gruff apology. They did not talk about it, did not need to. The work said everything that needed saying. After 2 weeks, Caleb had made progress. The interior was gutted, cleaned, ready for rebuilding. He had replaced the floor where dry rot had eaten through, patched the roof leaks, started stripping the oxidized aluminum exterior, revealing the silver beneath. And every night he worked on Brennan's puzzle. The constellation lock was elegant in its complexity. Each dial had to be set to a specific position, not just turned to align symbols, but rotated a precise number of times in a specific direction. Get it wrong and the mechanism would jam. Forcing it would destroy whatever was inside. Caleb worked methodically. The journal mentioned Brennan navigating by Orion during a mission in the Sahara, described counting rotations on a watch mechanism his father had built, referenced his mother's favorite constellation, Lyra, and how many stars it contained in the summer sky, numbers hidden in stories, directions embedded in memories. After 6 nights of trial and error, Caleb heard it, a soft click as the fourth dial settled into place. Then another, then another. The kind of precision engineering that belonged in a Swiss bank vault, not a rotting trailer in the Arizona desert. The lid released with a whisper of hydraulics. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, were 3 items. A stack of photographs, black and white, faded but clear. Brennan with his wife, Brennan standing beside a gleaming new Airstream, Brennan shaking hands with men in suits who had the government look. All smiles for the camera, all secrets behind the eyes. A brass challenge coin, heavy, worn smooth on one side from being carried in someone's pocket for years. On the reverse, engraved in tiny script, ad astra per aspera, through hardship to the stars, and a slip of paper, yellowed, brittle, covered in a grid of numbers and letters that looked like coordinates but were not geographic ones anyway. Caleb studied the paper under his flashlight, felt his pulse quicken. This was the next piece, the next step in Brennan's trail. He grabbed his laptop, ancient Dell he had bought third hand, opened the encrypted folder where he had been transcribing the journal, started cross-referencing. The numbers on the paper matched patterns in Brennan's entries, references to file systems, archive codes, the kind of notation that pointed to documents, not locations. It took 3 hours, but finally Caleb understood. The coordinates were not for a place. They were for a record, a specific file in the military archives database, something Brennan had accessed, something he wanted his son to find. Caleb had access to those archives. All veterans did, technically. But accessing classified files was a different matter. That required clearance, authorization, the kind of permissions Caleb did not have anymore. He sat back, stared at the numbers, felt the weight of the impossible, then shadow barked, sharp, alert, the way he had been trained to signal a threat. Caleb's head snapped up. Through the Airstream's window, he saw headlights, expensive headlights, the kind that came on luxury sedans, rolling slowly across the desert hardpan, heading straight for him. Nobody came out here. This was BLM land, empty, forgotten. The nearest neighbor was 3 miles away. Caleb's hand went to his waistband. Old habit, looking for a sidearm that was not there. He had sold his guns months ago. Needed the money more than the firepower. Stupid. Careless. The sedan stopped 20 feet from the Airstream, engine still running, headlights blazing. Caleb could not see who was inside. Just silhouettes. 2 people in the front. Shadow growled, low and continuous, the sound of a bind who had been trained to recognize danger. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. Tall, well-dressed even in casual clothes. Expensive shoes that had no business in the desert. He moved with the confidence of someone used to being in control, used to getting what he wanted. He walked toward the Airstream slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. But there was something in his posture, something that made Caleb's combat instincts light up like a Christmas tree. This was a predator trying to look harmless. The man stopped 10 feet away, smiled, the kind of smile that wealthy people use on waiters and mechanics and anyone else they consider beneath notice. "Quite the project you've got here," he said. His voice was smooth, educated, the accent of East Coast money. "Mind if I take a look, yeah?" Caleb said flatly. "I mind." The smile did not waver. "I'm Victor Harland. I run a development company. We acquire unique assets, architectural salvage, things with history. It's not for sale. I haven't made an offer yet." Harlan circled the Airstream slowly, assessing. His eyes lingered on the silver skin where Caleb had started polishing. "These old sovereigns, they're quite valuable to the right buyer, especially in original condition. I have a client with a very specific interest in this particular model. Still not for sale." Harlan stopped. The smile faded just a fraction, enough to show the calculation underneath. "I'm authorized to offer $20,000 cash right now. You can walk away from this heap of scrap with enough money to solve a lot of problems." 20,000 for a trailer Caleb bought for 100. It was insane. Nobody offered that kind of money unless they knew something, unless they knew what was inside. Caleb's mind raced. Harland. The name pinged something in his memory, something from the research he had been doing, something connected to Argent. "No thanks," Caleb said. His voice did not shake. "SEAL training, stay calm when the situation goes sideways. It has sentimental value." Harlan's mask slipped completely. For just a second, his eyes went cold, flat, the look of a man used to eliminating obstacles. "Sentiment is an expensive luxury, Mr. Thorne." He let the name hang in the air, proof that he knew who Caleb was, that this was not a random encounter. "Everything has a price. Think about my offer. I'm a very persistent man." He turned and walked back to the sedan. Did not hurry, did not look back, just got in and drove away, headlights receding into the darkness. Caleb stood frozen, heart hammering, shadow pressed against his legs, still growling. "Victor Harlan." Caleb pulled out his phone, searched the name. The results came fast. Harlan Global Enterprises, defense contractor, revenue in the billions. CEO Victor Harlan, grandson of Theodore Harlan, who had been a CIA section chief during the Cold War. The same era as Nathaniel Brennan, the same era as Argent. Caleb went back inside the Airstream, closed the door, locked it for the first time since he had bought the place. His hands were shaking now, not from fear, from recognition. This was not random. Harlan did not just happen to find him. He had been looking, searching, and he had found what he was looking for, or thought he had. Caleb grabbed the paper with the coordinates, the archive file numbers. He needed to know what Brennan had hidden, what was worth killing for 50 years ago, what might be worth killing for now. He called the one contact he still had from his SEAL days, a guy in naval intelligence who owed him a favor, the kind of favor that could get them both in trouble. The phone rang 4 times, then a familiar voice, groggy, annoyed. "Do you know what time it is?" "I need access to the classified military archives," Caleb said. "Specific file. I have the reference number." A long pause. "Caleb, man, we talked about this. You can't just call me for black bag stuff. I have a career. It's about Garrett." Another pause. Longer. Caleb could hear breathing on the other end. The calculations happening. "What file?" Caleb read off the numbers, heard typing, then silence. Long enough that Caleb thought the line had dropped. Jesus Christ, his contact. Whispered finally, "Caleb, this file is flagged. High-level classification. You can't just access this." "What is it?" "Operation Broadsword, Kandahar Province. That's Garrett's last mission." Caleb's vision narrowed. "Send it to me. I can't. If I access this, it gets logged. People will know. Send it to me." A long sigh. Then more typing. "Encrypted file. You'll need the password. I'm sending you the hash key separately. Burn after reading." And "Caleb, we're even after this. Don't call me again." The line went dead. 2 minutes later, Caleb's laptop pinged. Downloaded file. He entered the encryption key with fingers that barely worked. The file opened. Operation Broadsword. After action report. Classified top secret. Most of it was standard. Mission parameters. Personnel roster. Equipment manifest. The sanitized version of what happened. Garrett Reeves KIA by enemy sniper. Investigation concluded. No evidence of foul play, but buried in the metadata, in the file revision history, in the digital breadcrumbs that most people did not know to look for. Caleb found it, a partial transcript from Garrett's last radio transmission, the version that had been scrubbed from the official report. Garrett's voice crackling through static. "Target is not hostile. I repeat, target is not hostile. We have eyes on Western asset-making handoff with local contractors. Looks like Argent is cleaning house. Security detail is Harlan Global. Repeat, Harlan Global contractors on site. This isn't a combat op. This is transmission terminated." Caleb read the words 3 times. 4. 5. Until they burned into his brain. Harlan Global. Argent. Victor Harlan. The man who had just offered him $20,000 for a trailer he had bought for $100. The man whose grandfather had been CIA during Brennan's era. The man who now knew exactly where Caleb lived. Garrett had not died in combat. He had been executed, assassinated by the same network Brennan had tried to expose 50 years ago. Argent had not died. It had evolved, grown, become a corporate entity with enough power to eliminate witnesses and cover its tracks. And now Caleb had their attention. Shadow whined. Caleb looked down at the dog, at Garrett's final gift, at the animal that had led him here, to this moment, to this truth. He knew. Caleb said quietly, "You knew. That's why you brought me to this trailer, because Brennan's evidence is the key to proving what happened to Garrett." Shadow's tail wagged once. Slowly. Agreement. Caleb looked around the gutted airstream, at the work he had done, at the project that was supposed to be therapy, supposed to give him purpose while his brain sorted through trauma. It had become something else entirely. This was not about restoration anymore. This was about finishing what 2 dead men had started. This was about justice. Caleb closed the laptop, sat in the darkness, and for the first time since Kandahar felt something other than grief. It was cold, hard, focused. It was purpose. The war was not over. It had just found him again, and this time he knew who the enemy was. The sound of a belt sander is meditative when you let it be. The steady hum, the friction of grit against aluminum, the smell of metal dust and effort. Caleb worked in the early morning light before the desert heat made thinking impossible. Shadow lay in the shade of a Joshua tree watching, always watching. 3 weeks since Harlan's visit, 3 weeks of looking over his shoulder, checking the perimeter, sleeping light, the old combat reflexes that never really go away, just hibernate until you need them again. But the work helped. Hank had been right about that. The restoration had become something more than therapy. It was archaeology. Every layer of grime removed revealed another story. Water stains that showed where the roof had leaked in 1983. Cigarette burns from whoever owned it in the 90s. A child's crayon drawing on the inside of a cabinet door. A stick figure family. A house. A sun with rays like spikes. Someone had loved this place once, had dreams inside it, had lived. Caleb was teaching himself to do the same. Hank showed up every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, like clockwork. His ancient Ford Ranger would rattle across the hard pan at exactly 8 in the morning. He would bring coffee in a dented thermos and whatever parts he had scavenged during the week. Window seals, cabinet hinges, a working propane regulator he had cleaned and rebuilt himself. Show me what you did was always his first question. Caleb would walk him through the progress, the sections of new flooring, the rewired electrical panel, the slow, painstaking work of bringing dead systems back to life. Hank would nod, point out mistakes before they became problems, show Caleb the right way to do things, not the fast way. The right way, measure twice, cut once, he would say. And if you're not sure, measure 3 times. Pride makes you careless. Patience makes you good. They work side by side. 2 men who understood that sometimes the best conversations happen in silence. That you can say more with a level and a square than you can with 1,000 words. But on the 4th Thursday, Hank broke the pattern. They were installing new window frames. Delicate work. The old aluminum had to be removed without damaging the surrounding structure. Caleb was concentrating, holding a frame in place while Hank marked the rivet points. "You remind me of my son," Hank said quietly. Caleb's hands stilled. Hank had never mentioned family, never talked about anything beyond the work. "Didn't know you had kids." Had. Past tense. Hank set down his marker, stared at the window like it held answers. Daniel, good kid, smart, joined the Marines right out of high school, wanted to serve, wanted to make his old man proud. Caleb said nothing, just listened. The way you listen when someone is about to tell you something that cost them everything. He made it through Iraq, 2 deployments, came home in one piece, or so we thought. Hank's jaw worked. PTSD doesn't show up on x-rays, doesn't bleed, just eats you from the inside until there's nothing left but the shell. The desert wind moved through the Joshua trees, a lonely sound. He lasted 8 months stateside. Then one night he went into the garage, started the car, closed the door. Hank's voice was steady, factual, the way men talk about unbearable things. "My wife found him in the morning. I was at work. By the time I got to the hospital, he was gone." Caleb's throat felt tight. "I'm sorry." "Me too." Hank picked up the marker again. Hands steady. "That was 12 years ago. Took me a long time to stop being angry. At him, at the core, at God, at myself for not seeing it coming." "How'd you get past it?" "I didn't." You don't get past something like that. You just learn to carry it different. Hank met Caleb's eyes. "But I'll tell you what helped. Building things, fixing things, taking something broken and making it whole again. It won't bring Daniel back, won't change what happened, but it keeps my hands busy, keeps my mind from going places it shouldn't go." He tapped the window frame with one calloused finger. "And every once in a while, I get to help someone else who's trying to put themselves back together. Someone who reminds me that not every story has to end the way Daniel's did. Caleb understood then why Hank had offered to help, why he showed up like clockwork, why he taught with such patience. This was not charity. This was Hank trying to save the son he had lost. Over and over, one broken veteran at a time. Thank you, Caleb said, meaning more than the restoration lessons. Hank nodded once, picked up the drill. Let's get this window in before the heat hits. They worked until noon, then Hank left. Same as always. But something had shifted. The work felt different now. Not just therapy, not just distraction. It felt like honor, like proving that some stories could have different endings. Caleb was securing the last rivet when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He let it go to voicemail. 10 minutes later, it rang again. Same number. He answered. Mr. Thorne, a woman's voice said. Professional, cold. This is Sandra Peterson from First Desert Bank. I'm calling regarding your checking account. What about it? There's been a fraud alert triggered on your account. We'll need you to come in to verify some transactions before we can release the hold. Caleb's stomach dropped. What kind of hold? Total freeze. We've suspended all activity pending investigation. Standard procedure for potential identity theft. I haven't had any identity theft. The system flags several suspicious patterns. We take these matters very seriously. Can you come in today? How long will this take? Hard to say. Could be a few days, could be longer. We'll expedite as much as possible. The line went dead. Caleb stared at his phone. His disability check had just hit. Rent was due, food, gas. Everything ran through that account. Without access, he was dead in the water. He called the bank back, got a different person, then another. Each one gave him a different story, different timeline, different requirements. The bureaucratic runaround that feels less like incompetence and more like deliberate obstruction. By the third call, Caleb understood. This was not random. This was Harland. The next morning, Hank did not show up. Caleb waited until 8:30, then 9. By 9:15, he was worried enough to drive to the scrapyard. Hank was there, sitting in his office, staring at a letter on his desk like it might bite him. What's wrong? Hank looked up, 20 years older than he had been yesterday. County inspector came by this morning, found violations, hazardous material storage, zoning issues, things that have been the same for 30 years. Suddenly they matter. What does that mean? Means I've got 30 days to bring everything up to code or they shut me down. The retrofit they're requiring, Hank tapped the letter. $150,000 minimum. Caleb felt ice in his veins. You don't have that? No, and the bank won't loan it. Not to a 70-year-old man with no succession plan. Hank's hands were shaking. Slight, barely noticeable. But there, 30 years. Gone. This is Harlan. Hank looked at him. Sharp. Understanding dawning. The man who came to your trailer. He's trying to isolate me. Cut off my resources. Anyone who helps me becomes a target. Then I'm a target. Hank stood up. Slow but steady. Good. I've been one before. Doesn't scare me as much as it used to. Hank, you can't. Can't what? Can't help a friend. Can't stand up to a bully. The old Marine was showing through the scrapyard owner. Spine straight, eyes hard. I lost my son because he fought battles alone. Thought he had to be strong. Had to handle it himself. I'm not watching another young man go through that. This isn't your fight. The hell it isn't. You made it mine when you walked into my yard looking for Airstream parts. Hank came around the desk, put a hand on Caleb's shoulder. Heavy, solid. We'll figure this out, together. That's what brothers in arms do. Caleb wanted to argue, wanted to push him away, protect him from what was coming. But he also needed help, needed someone who understood, needed to not be alone. Okay, he said quietly. They spent the afternoon strategizing. Hank called in favors, contacted other veterans. Put out word that he needed short-term capital. It would not be enough. They both knew that, but it was something. It was fighting back. Caleb drove back to the airstream as the sun was setting. Shadow greeted him with the usual enthusiasm, tail wagging, that goofy dog smile that said everything was okay even when it was not. Caleb fed him, checked the perimeter, settled in for another night of work. He had stopped by the hardware store earlier. Claire had asked about the restoration, offered to source specialty parts. He had thanked her but kept it brief. Did not want to pull anyone else into what was coming. She had given him a look, the kind that said she knew he was lying, but she did not push. The journal had become his obsession. He had read it cover to cover a dozen times, memorized the patterns, the codes, the careful way Brennan documented everything without documenting anything. But there had to be more. The bearer bonds were the prize, the money Argent wanted, but Brennan was too smart to leave them in an obvious place. The steel box had been a test, a first step. The real treasure was still hidden. Caleb lay on his cot staring at the ceiling, thinking. Shadow was restless tonight, pacing, whining at odd moments, the way he used to when Garrett was on a mission, when he sensed his handler was in danger. "What is it, boy?" Shadow went to the AC vent, the one they had removed during the gut job. The cover was off, exposing the ducting. Shadow stuck his nose inside, sniffed, pulled back, looked at Caleb, barked once, sharp, insistent. Caleb got up, grabbed his flashlight, shined it into the vent. At first, nothing, just dust and dead insects. Then he saw it, a seam, too straight, too deliberate. His pulse kicked up. He reached inside, felt along the metal, found the edge, pulled. A section of ductwork came away. False panel, behind it another oilcloth package. Caleb's hands shook as he unwrapped it. A micro SD card, taped to a folded piece of paper. And beneath that, a small digital recorder. The old kind, from the early 2000s. Battery long dead. Caleb took everything to his laptop. The SD card went in first. It took a moment to read, old format, barely compatible. Then files appeared. Video file, dated 2 years ago. Recorded timestamp 0600 hours. The morning of Garrett's last mission. Caleb's finger hovered over the play button. Part of him did not want to press it, did not want to see Garrett alive again, moving, talking, being, but he had to know. He pressed play. The screen filled with Garrett's face, younger than Caleb remembered, lighter somehow, before Kandahar had taken pieces of both of them. Garrett was in a tactical vest, somewhere outside. Dawn light. You could hear morning prayers in the distance. Caleb, Garrett said, his voice. Caleb had forgotten how he sounded. "If you're watching this, I'm probably gone. And I'm sorry for that. Sorry for whatever I'm about to put you through." He looked away from the camera, checked something off screen, looked back. "I found something big. Remember Argent, the ghost story from the old intelligence briefings? It's real. It's been real since the Cold War. Nathaniel Brennan was tracking it back in the 70s. CIA operative, good man. He went dark trying to expose them." Garrett pulled out a small brass coin, the same one Caleb had found in the steel box. "I've been following the money trail. Harlan Global Enterprises. Victor Harlan. His grandfather was Theodore Harlan, CIA section chief, one of the founding members of Argent. It's not a person, it's a network. People in power who use wars to enrich themselves. Arms deals, black budgets, bearer bonds that can't be traced." He pocketed the coin. "I'm uploading everything I found to a dead drop. The coordinates are encoded in Shadow's collar tag. If something happens to me, Shadow will find you. He's trained to. I've been working with him on something I call Protocol Falcon. Emergency response. If you ever need him to go full tactical, there's a whistle, my dad's old compass whistle. I hid it in Brennan's trailer. The airstream. Shadow knows where it is. Garrett's expression hardened. Caleb, these people are dangerous. They've killed to protect this secret. They'll kill again. But Brennan's evidence is the key. He documented everything. 30 years of transactions, names, dates, proof that Argent has been operating at the highest levels of government and defense contracting. He leaned closer to the camera. I know you. I know you will want revenge when you find out what happened. But this isn't about revenge. It's about justice. About making sure these bastards can't do this to anyone else. A pause. And if I'm being honest, it's about finishing what a good man started 50 years ago. Brennan deserves that. His son deserves that. Garrett looked directly into the lens. I've made contact with someone who can use this evidence. If this goes wrong, they'll know what to do. But I need you to find it first, to make sure it gets to the right people. He smiled, that easy, confident smile that had gotten them through 100 impossible situations. I'm sorry I got you into this, but I'm not sorry I tried. Some things are worth the risk. Shadow will take care of you. He's the best partner I ever had. Except for you. He reached toward the camera. The video ended. Caleb sat in the darkness, tears running down his face, the first he had let fall since the funeral. Shadow pressed against his leg, solid, real, still doing the job Garrett had given him. He knew Caleb whispered. He knew they'd kill him. And he went anyway. Shadow whined, soft, understanding. Caleb wiped his eyes, looked at the other files on the SD card, spreadsheets, documents, bank records, everything Garrett had compiled, and one more video file, labeled Final Ledger Location. He opened it. Garrett again. Different time, night, inside a vehicle. You could hear rain on the roof. If you found this, you found the SD card. Good. Now listen carefully. Brennan's complete ledger is in the airstream, but not where you'd expect. The chassis, the main support beam that runs the length of the trailer. There's a rivet, third one from the front on the driver's side. It's not a rivet, it's a release mechanism. Garrett held up a small tool, custom-made, strange angles. I made this from Brennan's schematics. You'll need it to turn the fake rivet exactly 720 degrees counterclockwise. No more, no less. That opens a hermetically sealed compartment built into the frame itself. The ledger is inside, along with the bearer bonds. He set the tool down. Caleb, that ledger proves everything. Every Argent transaction since 1968, including the one that got me killed. Use it. Finish this. And if you can't, Garrett's jaw tightened, burn it all down. Make them pay. The video ended. Caleb looked down at the folded paper, opened it. It was a schematic, technical drawing of the Airstream's chassis, with detailed instructions written in Garrett's handwriting. And taped to the bottom the tool itself. Small, precisely machined, waiting. Shadow barked, not the alert bark, the excited one. The one that said, finally, finally, you understand. Caleb got to his feet, grabbed his flashlight, went outside, crawled under the Airstream. The chassis was dusty, covered in road grime from decades of travel, but there, third rivet from the front, driver's side. It looked like every other rivet, except when you look close, you could see it was slightly different. The head was thicker, the edges more precise. Caleb fitted the tool to it, applied pressure, turned, it resisted, then moved. Smooth, like it had been machined yesterday instead of 50 years ago. 720 degrees, 2 full rotations. Something clicked deep in the frame. A section of the belly pan, maybe 2 feet long, released, hinged downward on pneumatic struts that still worked, still held pressure after half a century. Inside was a void, lined with desiccant packs and sealed compartments. And sitting in the center, wrapped in layers of preservation material, was a leather-bound ledger. Thick, heavy, the kind of book that held secrets worth dying for. Caleb pulled it out with reverent hands, carried it inside, set it on the dinette table. Shadow sat beside him, tail wagging, mission accomplished. Caleb opened the ledger. The first page was dated January 1968. Nathaniel Brennan's handwriting, neat, precise, Argent financial operations, classified for my son's eyes only. What followed was 30 years of documentation, names, dates, wire transfers, shell company registrations, every transaction that Argent had made, every dollar they had stolen, every person they had bribed or eliminated. Theodore Harlan's name appeared on page 3 and kept appearing again and again. The architect, the founder, the man who had built an empire on theft and murder. His son's name appeared in the 1990s entries. Victor Harlan, taking over, expanding, modernizing, and in the recent entries, the ones that made Caleb's blood run cold. Operation Broadsword, Kandahar Province, security provided by Harlan Global Enterprises. Asset elimination authorized. Target SEAL reconnaissance team. Reason compromised Argent supply chain operation. Authorized by Victor Harlan. Executed by unknown contractor. Professional. Long-range precision. Collateral zero. Clean termination. It was all there. Written in bureaucratic language that made murder sound like accounting. Garrett's death. Reduced to a line item. A necessary expense. Caleb felt something break inside him. Not in the bad way, in the way that ice breaks in spring. The frozen grief that had held him paralyzed for 2 years was cracking, melting, being replaced by something hotter. Purpose. He spent 3 hours reading, absorbing, understanding the scope of what Brennan had documented. Argent was not just one conspiracy, it was the conspiracy. The rot at the heart of American intelligence and defense. Billions of dollars, dozens of deaths, 50 years of getting away with it. But now he had proof. The question was what to do with it. Shadow's bark pulled him from his thoughts. The alert bark. Threat. Caleb's head snapped up. Listened. Footsteps. Multiple people. Moving quietly but not quietly enough. He killed his flashlight. Moved to the window. Peered out through the gap in the blinds. 2 figures in black tactical gear, moving low, professional, approaching from opposite sides. Not police, not random thieves, contractors. Caleb's training kicked in, the part of his brain that had kept him alive through a dozen combat deployments, the part that turned fear into fuel and panic into precision. He had prepared for this. After Harlan's visit, after realizing he was a target, the Airstream was not just a restoration project anymore. It was a fortress. Caleb moved fast, hit the first switch. The exterior floodlights erupted, 1,200 lumens of LED brilliance, blinding after full dark. The contractors froze, hands going up to shield their eyes. Second switch, the sonic alarm. High-frequency pulse that felt like ice picks in your eardrums. Non-lethal, but completely disorienting. Both contractors stumbled. One dropped to a knee, the other retreated. Caleb was already moving. Out the rear emergency exit he had installed. A hatch that dropped him onto the ground behind the Airstream. Shadow was with him, silent, focused. The way he had been trained, the contractors were recovering, trying to regroup, but they had lost the initiative, lost the element of surprise. Caleb came around the driver's side, low, fast. The first contractor was reaching for a sidearm when Caleb hit him. Textbook SEAL close quarters combat, strike to the nerve cluster in the shoulder. Grab the wrist, hyperextend the elbow. The gun clattered to the ground. Follow through, sweep the leg, control the fall. The contractor hit the dirt hard. Caleb was on him. Knee on the spine, zip tie from his pocket, hands secured in 4 seconds. Shadow had the second contractor. Not biting, just there. 85 pounds of muscle and teeth blocking his escape. Snarling. The universal language of you move and I end you, down Caleb ordered. Hands behind your head. Do it now. The contractor complied. Smart. You don't fight a trained dog and an angry seal at the same time. Not if you want to see sunrise. Caleb secured him. Both contractors face down, hands bound, no weapons. Who sent you? Silence. I'm going to ask one more time. Then I let the dog ask. Shadow's growl intensified on cue. Beautiful timing. They had never trained together. But the dog understood. Understood Caleb. Understood the mission. Harlan, the first contractor, finally said, Victor Harlan, we were just supposed to search the place, not hurt anyone. Just search. Search for what? Documents, files, anything historical. The ledger, the contractor did not answer. Did not have to. Caleb pulled out his phone, called 911, gave the location, 2 attempted burglars, secured and restrained. Then he sat on the Airstream's steps and waited for the sheriff. The deputies arrived in 20 minutes, took statements, looked at the tactical gear with raised eyebrows, asked questions that Caleb answered carefully, truthfully, but not completely. The contractors were arrested, hauled off with promises of felony charges. One deputy stayed behind, older, gray at the temples, eyes that had seen things. You know these guys are going to make bail by morning, he said. Yeah, and whoever hired them isn't going to stop, I know. The deputy studied Caleb, saw the military bearing, the scars, the look of a man who had been in worse situations than this. You need help, you call us. Don't try to handle this alone. Appreciate it. The deputy left. Caleb was alone with Shadow in the night and the knowledge that this was just the beginning. He went back inside, looked at the ledger, at the proof, at the evidence that could bring down an empire. Harlan knew he had it now, or suspected. The contractors would report back. Harlan would escalate, would come harder, faster, with more resources. The smart play was to run, take the ledger, disappear, live to fight another day. But Caleb was done running, done hiding, done letting other people decide his fate. He picked up his phone, pulled up the number Harlan had left on his business card. The one Caleb had kept for exactly this moment, dialed. It rang twice. Then Harlan's voice, smooth even at 2 in the morning. Mr. Thorne, I was wondering when you'd call. Your contractors are in jail. Contractors. I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about. Brennan's ledger, I have it. All of it. 50 years of Argent operations, including what you did to Garrett Reeves. Silence on the other end, long enough that Caleb thought Harlan might have hung up. Then that's quite an accusation. Do you have proof I have everything? Then I suppose we have a problem. The smooth facade was cracking, showing the predator underneath. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to bring me that ledger, all copies, all evidence, and in return, I'll let you walk away. Clean break. New identity if you want it. Money. Whatever you need. Or I finish what I started in Kandahar. But this time I won't be quick about it. I'll take my time. With you. With anyone who's helped you. That old man at the scrapyard. The woman at the hardware store. Everyone. Caleb's jaw tightened. You threatening civilians now. I'm explaining the stakes. This is bigger than you understand, bigger than Brennan, bigger than your friend. Argent exists because it has to, because the world needs people willing to do what's necessary. You can't stop it. You can only choose whether you die trying. I'm not giving you anything. Harlan's laugh was cold. Then I'll come and take it. And you, midnight tomorrow, your Airstream, just you and me, we'll settle this the old-fashioned way. The line went dead. Caleb set down the phone, looked at Shadow. Looks like we're going to war. Shadow's tail wagged once. Ready, willing, waiting. Caleb spent the rest of the night planning. Not running, not hiding. Planning. Harlan wanted a confrontation. Wanted to handle this personally. Ego. Arrogance, the fatal flaw of men who have never been told no. Caleb would give him exactly what he wanted, but on Caleb's terms, in Caleb's space, with every advantage tipped in his favor. He had 24 hours to prepare. It would be enough. Dawn came cold and clear, the kind of desert morning that feels like a promise or a warning. Caleb had been awake for hours, planning, preparing, turning the airstream from a restoration project into something else entirely, a trap. He had learned a long time ago that the best defense is not walls, it's information, control, making your enemy think they have the advantage right up until the moment they realize they never did. Harlan would come tonight expecting to intimidate, to threaten, to take what he wanted through force or fear. He was used to that working, used to people folding when faced with power and money and the implied violence of men who had killed before. But Caleb was not most people. He started with the space itself. The airstream was small, confined. That was an advantage if you knew how to use it. Limited approaches, controlled sight lines, nowhere to maneuver. He removed the dinette cushions, created clear lines of movement, positioned the rebuilt table so it would block a direct path to the rear. Not obviously, just enough to funnel someone entering through the door toward the center of the space, where Caleb wanted them. He installed a digital recorder in the ceiling, hidden in the AC vent housing. Voice-activated, high-quality microphone, the kind that could pick up a whisper from 15 feet away, powered by a battery pack that would run for 12 hours. Everything Harlan said would be captured, preserved, evidence. He set up his laptop on the counter, screen angled away from the door. To anyone entering it would look like he was working, distracted. But the screen was actually showing the feed from a wireless camera he had positioned outside, mounted in a Joshua tree 20 yards away, giving him a view of anyone approaching. No surprises. He checked his phone. The number for the FBI's Phoenix field office was already programmed. One button. That's all it would take to bring federal agents down on this location. But timing mattered. Too early and Harlan would lawyer up. Too late and things could go sideways fast. Caleb needed the confession first. Needed Harlan to say the words. On tape. Undeniable. Shadow watch from the floor. Patient. The dog understood when missions were happening. Could sense the focus, the preparation, the way Caleb moved differently when violence was a possibility instead of a memory. Around 10, Hank's truck appeared on the horizon, the old Ford Ranger bouncing across the hardpan. Caleb had not called him, had not asked for help, but somehow Hank knew. The old Marine climbed out, took one look at Caleb's face, at the way the airstream was arranged, at the tension in the air, when he asked, "Tonight, midnight." Hank nodded, walked to his truck bed, pulled out a long canvas bag, unzipped it. Inside was a rifle, Remington 700, bolt action, the kind of gun that had been killing people accurately since Vietnam. "I'll be in position at 2200 hours," Hank said, 300 yards out. "East Ridge. You get in trouble, I end it." "Hank, you can't cannon well." The old man's eyes were hard, not angry, resolved. "You think I'm going to sit home while some corporate bastard tries to kill the closest thing I've got to a son?" Not happening. Caleb wanted to argue, wanted to protect him, but he also understood Hank needed this, needed to stand with someone instead of losing someone, needed to rewrite the ending that had haunted him for 12 years. "Okay," Caleb said quietly, "but you don't shoot unless I'm down. This has to be done right. Legal. By the book. By the book." "Got it." Hank set the rifle back in the bag. "What else do you need?" They spent the next 2 hours rehearsing. Caleb walked Hank through the plan, where he would be positioned, what he would say, how he would provoke Harlan into confessing. The FBI was the end game, but only after they had evidence that would stick, that could not be dismissed or buried or explained away by expensive lawyers. Hank listened, asked questions, pointed out flaws. Between them, they refined the approach. made it tighter, cleaner. Around noon, Hank left to get into position early. Scout the terrain, find the perfect shooting lane, just in case. Caleb was alone again, him and Shadow in the waiting. He made coffee, ate without tasting, checked the recorder 3 times, the camera 4, the phone 5. Everything worked. Everything was ready, except him. He sat on the Airstream steps as the sun tracked across the sky. Shadow beside him. The desert stretched out in all directions. Empty, vast, indifferent to human drama. Caleb thought about Garrett, about that last moment on the rooftop, the surprise in his eyes, the way he had fallen, the blood that had soaked into Kandahar dust and disappeared like it had never existed. He thought about Nathaniel Brennan, a man he had never met but felt like he knew, someone who had stood up to power, who had documented evil because someone had to, who had died trying to make sure the truth survived even if he did not. He thought about Hank's son, Daniel, who had made it through war only to lose the battle with himself. Another casualty, another name that should have meant something. And he thought about all the others, the ones who had died because Argent needed them dead, the operators and analysts and whistleblowers who had gotten too close, who had asked the wrong questions, who had stood in the way of profit. 50 years of bodies, of silence, of getting away with it. Not anymore. Caleb pulled out the brass challenge coin, the one from Brennan's box, turned it over in his fingers. Ad astra per aspera, through hardship to the stars. He understood it now. The stars were not a destination. They were what you reached for when everything else had been taken away. Hope, purpose, the stubborn refusal to let the bastards win. Shadow leaned against his leg, warm, solid, living proof that some promises get kept, that some missions get finished, that sometimes the right thing finds you even when you are not looking for it. We're going to end this, Caleb said quietly, for Garrett, for Brennan, for everyone who couldn't finish it themselves. Shadow's tail wagged once. Agreement. The sun set. The temperature dropped. The desert night settled in with its particular silence, the kind that makes you hear your own heartbeat. Caleb went inside, checked everything one last time. The recorder, the camera, the phone, his positioning, the clear path to the emergency exit if things went wrong. He had left the bearer bonds in their compartment, sealed them back up. They were not the point anymore. The money did not matter. Only the truth mattered. Only justice. At 11:30, his phone buzzed. Text from a number he did not recognize. On my way. Come alone or people die. Caleb typed back, I'm here. He did not mention Hank, did not mention the FBI on speed dial, did not mention any of it. Let Harlan think he had control. Let him think this was his operation, his terms. The best traps are the ones you walk into willingly. At 11:55, headlights appeared. 2 vehicles, the same black sedan from before, and behind it a larger SUV, both moving slowly across the desert, careful of the terrain. Caleb watched on his laptop screen. Counted people. The sedan held 2, driver and Harlan. The SUV had 4 more. Backup, insurance. Men with guns in case things did not go according to plan. 6 against 1. Except Caleb had spent 20 years learning how to beat worse odds than that. The vehicle stopped 30 yards out, far enough to not be threatening, close enough to respond if needed. Professional spacing. The sedan's rear door opened. Victor Harlan stepped out. Even in the darkness, even in the middle of nowhere, he was immaculate. Pressed slacks, expensive jacket, like he was attending a board meeting instead of a murder. He walked toward the Airstream alone, hands visible, non-threatening. The civilized predator trying to look civilized. Caleb opened the door, stood in the frame, Shadow at his side. Mr. Thorne Harlan said. His voice was calm, almost friendly. Thank you for seeing me. Didn't have much choice. We always have choices. The question is whether we make smart ones. Harlan stopped 10 feet away. Are you going to invite me in? Caleb stepped aside. Let Harlan enter. Close the door behind him. The space suddenly felt smaller, more confined. Two men, one dog, and 50 years of murder between them. Harlan looked around, took in the restored interior, the careful craftsmanship, the transformation from wreck to something approaching beautiful. Impressive work, he said. My grandfather would have appreciated it. He loved this trailer, used it as his mobile office during operations. Nathaniel Brennan's trailer. Technically, yes, but Brennan stole it, along with quite a lot of other things that didn't belong to him. Harlan's eyes were cold, calculating. My grandfather spent 20 years trying to recover what Brennan took, never succeeded, and now here you are, a broke veteran, stumbling into the middle of something you don't understand. I understand enough. Do you understand that Argent isn't some criminal conspiracy? It's a necessity, a way to fund operations that can't go through official channels, to protect American interests when the bureaucrats are too afraid to do what needs doing. Caleb gestured to the dinette. Sit down. Harlan raised an eyebrow but complied, slid into the booth. Caleb sat across from him, the table between them, shadow lying on the floor, watching, waiting. Tell me about Garrett Reeves, Caleb said. Who? The SEAL you had killed, Kandahar, 2 years ago. Harlan's expression did not change. I'm afraid you're mistaken. I've never ordered anyone killed. The ledger says different. Ledgers can be forged. Accusations can be made. Proof is harder. Harlan leaned back, confident. You called me here for a reason, so let's stop dancing. What do you want? The truth. The truth, Harlan smiled. The truth is that men like my grandfather built the modern world. They made the hard choices, got their hands dirty, so people like you could sleep safely at night. And yes, sometimes that meant eliminating threats, removing obstacles, ensuring that the mission succeeded. That's a nice way of saying murder. It's an accurate way of describing reality. Your friend Reeves stumbled onto an operation he had no clearance for. He was warned multiple times. He didn't listen. So yes, I authorized his removal, same as I've authorized dozens of others, same as my grandfather did, same as will keep happening long after you and I are gone. Caleb kept his face neutral, but inside his heart was hammering. Harlan was confessing, actually confessing, the arrogance of a man who had never faced consequences, who could not imagine a world where his words mattered. The recorder in the ceiling was getting every syllable. Why are you telling me this? Caleb asked. Because you're not walking out of here. Because my men outside have orders. And because I want you to understand in your final moments that this was never personal. It was just business. Harlan's smile widened. You should have taken my offer. $20,000. A fresh start. Instead, you chose to be a hero. Heroes die, Mr. Thorne, quite frequently in my experience. You're going to kill me. Not me personally. I don't get my hands dirty. But yes, you'll disappear, along with that ledger, along with any evidence you think you have. And in a week, nobody will remember you existed. Caleb nodded slowly, like he was accepting his fate, like he was a broken man realizing he had lost. Then he pulled out his phone, showed Harlan the screen. FBI Phoenix Field Office. Call in progress. Timer showing 18 minutes 43 seconds. Harlan's face went white. They've been listening the whole time, Caleb said quietly. Every word, every confession, every threat. It's over. Harlan's hand went to his jacket. Fast. Pulled out a compact pistol. Aimed it at Caleb's chest. You stupid son of a... Caleb whistled. Not a random sound. A specific pattern. 3 short bursts, 1 long. The melody from an old compass whistle. The one Garrett had hidden. The one he had used to train Shadow on something called Protocol Falcon. Shadow moved. Not like a pet, like a weapon. 85 pounds of trained German Shepherd launching across 6 feet of space in less than a second. No warning, no hesitation, just explosive violence of action. The dog hit Harlan's center mass. The impact drove him backward. The pistol fired, wild. The round punched through the ceiling. Then Shadow's jaws were on his arm. Not tearing, controlling. The way military working dogs are trained. Apply pressure, maintain control, wait for orders. Harlan screamed, tried to shake the dog off, tried to bring the gun around. But Shadow's weight was too much, his grip too strong. They went down together. Harlan's head cracked against the edge of the counter. A sound like a hammer on wood. He went limp. Shadow released, stepped back, sat, looked at Caleb for approval. "Good boy," Caleb said, his voice shaking. "Good boy." Outside, the backup team was reacting. Doors opening, shouts, the sound of weapons being drawn. Then another sound, louder, closer, sirens, red and blue lights painting the desert. Multiple vehicles. The FBI had been 3 miles out, waiting for the signal, for the confession. For the moment when they could move without Harlan's lawyers destroying the case. That moment was now. Agents poured from SUVs with FBI stenciled on the sides. Weapons drawn, commands shouted. Harlan's backup team dropped their guns, hands up. Nobody wanted to shoot it out with federal agents. 2 agents entered the airstream, saw Harlan on the floor, unconscious, bleeding from the head. Shadow sitting calmly beside him. Saw Caleb with his hands up. Non-threatening, Caleb Thorne, one agent asked. "Yes, sir. You made the call. Yes, sir. Everything's on the recording. Full confession, threats, admission of murder. It's all there." The agent looked at his partner, nodded. "Secure the suspect. Get medical. And someone get this man a blanket. He's in shock." Caleb had not realized he was shaking. Adrenaline dump. The aftermath of controlled violence. The moment when your body realizes you are not dead and tries to process what just happened. They wrapped him in a thermal blanket, sat him in on the Airstream steps, Shadow pressed against his leg. Solid, real, still doing his job. Paramedics loaded Harlan onto a stretcher. Unconscious but alive. Concussion. Maybe skull fracture. But alive. That mattered. Dead men don't stand trial, don't face justice, don't answer for their crimes. An FBI agent sat beside Caleb. Young, professional, sympathetic eyes. "You did good," she said. "That recording is solid." His confession, the threats, combined with the ledger you mentioned, will have enough to bring down his entire network. "There are others," Caleb said. His voice sounded distant, not quite his own. "The ledger has names, 50 years of them. People in government, defense contractors. Argent isn't just Harlan, we know. We've been investigating for 18 months. Your friend Garrett Reeves, he made contact before he died, sent us encrypted files. We've been building a case, but we needed leverage, needed someone on the inside. You gave us that." Caleb looked at her. "Garrett contacted you." "Yes, he knew what he was getting into, knew the risk, but he wanted to make sure if something happened, the evidence would survive." She pulled out a tablet, showed him a photo. Garrett in civilian clothes, meeting with 2 people in suits, FBI badges visible. "He was working with you," Caleb said. Understanding dawning the whole time. Unofficially, we couldn't protect him, couldn't risk tipping off Argent that we were investigating. But he knew. He chose to move forward anyway. Said some things were worth the risk. Tears burned Caleb's eyes. Not from grief this time. From pride. From understanding. Garrett had not died stumbling into a conspiracy. He had died fighting one, knowing the case, paying it willingly. "He left you the trail," the agent continued. "The Airstream, the ledger, Shadow, everything you needed to finish what he started. You honored that. You finished it. Caleb nodded, could not speak, just nodded. They took his statement, photographed the scene, collected the ledger as evidence, seized Harlan's vehicles, arrested everyone. By 3 in the morning, it was over. The FBI convoy pulled away, red taillights disappearing into the darkness. Caleb was alone again. Him and Shadow in the desert silence. Hank emerged from the darkness, rifle slung over his shoulder. He had watched the whole thing from his position, had Shadow in his scope the entire time, just in case. He sat beside Caleb on the steps, said nothing, just sat. Two men who had been through wars, who had survived, who had found something worth fighting for. Thank you, Caleb said finally. For what? For being here, for teaching me, for giving me a reason to keep going. Hank put a hand on Caleb's shoulder. Heavy, solid. That's what brothers do. They sat until dawn, watching the sky turn from black to gray to gold, the desert waking up, the world continuing like nothing had happened, even though everything had. 6 months later, the world looked different. The trial had lasted 3 months. Every day, Caleb sat in that courtroom, watched the evidence presented, watched Harlan's lawyers try to spin 50 years of murder into misunderstandings, watched them fail. The bearer bonds had been liquidated through federal channels. $187 million. After taxes and legal fees, enough remained to build something lasting. Caleb had spent weeks with lawyers and accountants, setting up the foundation, creating the structure, making sure it would survive long after he was gone. Hank had helped, Claire too. She had quit the hardware store to run operations full-time. And when the paperwork was done, when the Airstream was converted, when the first veteran walked through the door, Caleb had felt it. The weight lifting, the purpose settling into his bones. This was what Garrett had died for. This was what Brennan had hidden for. This was the stars they had reached for through all that hardship. Victor Harlan had been convicted on 43 federal counts: conspiracy, murder for hire, racketeering, money laundering. The list went on. He was serving life without parole at a supermax facility in Colorado. Alone, isolated, forgotten. His network had collapsed. The ledger had been the key. 50 years of evidence, names and dates and transactions. The FBI had made 27 arrests, from senators to generals to corporate executives. Argent was finished, exposed, destroyed. And Garrett's name had been cleared. The official record now showed the truth. Navy SEAL Garrett Reeves, killed in the line of duty while investigating corruption, posthumously awarded the Defense Superior Service Medal, his sacrifice recognized, his honor restored. Caleb stood in the parking lot of a VA hospital in Flagstaff, Arizona. Behind him was the Airstream, fully restored now, gleaming silver, beautiful, but no longer his home. It was a mobile clinic, the Reeves Brennan Foundation's flagship, staffed by therapists and counselors, equipped with everything needed to provide PTSD treatment, to place therapy dogs with veterans who needed them, to teach restoration skills as a path to healing. Hank was inside, teaching a young Marine how to rebuild a cabinet, showing him the same patience he had shown Caleb, the same understanding, passing it forward. Claire from the hardware store had joined as operations director, coordinating logistics, sourcing materials, making sure the foundation could reach veterans wherever they were. And Caleb was on the road, him and Shadow, traveling from town to town, via hospital to VO hospital, finding veterans who needed help, who were drowning, who could not see a way forward, showing them there was one. They had been to Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico. Every stop was the same. Park the Airstream, set up shop, offer services, free of charge. No paperwork, no bureaucracy, just help. Some veterans came for therapy. Some came for the dog program. Some just came to talk to someone who understood, who had been there, who had made it through to the other side. Caleb did not tell them his story unless they asked, did not need to. They could see it in his eyes, in the way he moved, in the quiet competence that only comes from surviving the unsurvivable. He taught them what Hank had taught him, that fixing things fixes you, that purpose can be found in the smallest tasks, that you don't have to carry it alone. Shadow was the real star. The dog had a gift, could sense which veterans needed him most, would sit beside them, let them pet him, absorb their pain in that mysterious way that dogs do, give them something to care for besides their own suffering. The foundation was small, but growing, funded by the bearer bonds. Caleb had donated most of them, kept only enough to keep the operation running. The rest had gone to establishing scholarships, building programs, creating the infrastructure to help thousands instead of just one. Brennan would have approved, Garrett too. On this particular morning, Caleb was preparing to leave Flagstaff, heading south to Tucson. 3 more VA hospitals, 6 more weeks on the road, then back to Apache Junction for maintenance and restocking. The routine was good, gave him structure, purpose, something to wake up for every morning. The nightmares had lessened. They still came, probably always would, but they were different now, less jagged, less consuming. He could wake from them and remember where he was, remember why he was alive, remember that Garrett's death had meant something. Hank walked out of the Airstream, wiped his hands on a rag, smiled. Kid's got potential, he said. Good hands, listens well, like someone else I know. Yeah, well, you taught me that persistence pays off. Hank squinted at the sky. You heading out? Soon. Want to beat the heat? Drive safe. And Caleb. Hank's expression softened. I'm proud of you. What you've built here. What you're doing. Daniel would be proud too. Caleb's throat tightened. Thank you. For everything. Don't thank me. You did the work. I just showed you where the tools were. Hank pulled him into a brief, hard hug. The kind men give when words are not enough. Then stepped back. See you in 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Caleb climbed into his truck. Shadow jumped into the passenger seat. They pulled out of the parking lot, the Airstream trailing behind, gleaming in the morning sun. The highway stretched ahead, empty, open, full of possibility. Caleb thought about Brennan, about a man he had never met who had left a trail for someone to find, who had trusted that the truth would survive, even if he did not, who had believed that one person could make a difference. He thought about Garrett, about his best friend who had seen evil and decided to fight it, who had known the cost and paid it anyway, who had left behind the tools Caleb needed to finish the mission. And he thought about himself, about a broken veteran who had bought a trailer for his last $100 because a dog had insisted, who had found purpose in restoration, who had discovered that sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing. The road curved ahead. Tucson was 8 hours south, then Phoenix, then Yuma, then back around. An endless circuit of helping, of healing, of showing other broken people that they could be whole again. It was not glory, was not fame, was not the kind of life anyone writes songs about. But it was good, it was right, it was enough. Shadow stuck his head out the window, tongue lolling, happy, doing the job Garrett had given him, protecting, guiding, being exactly what Caleb needed exactly when he needed it. Good boy, Caleb said softly. Good boy. The miles rolled past. The desert stretched eternal. And somewhere ahead, veterans were waiting. People who needed to know they were not alone. That someone understood. That there was a path forward even when you could not see it. Caleb would find them, one at a time, town by town, until he could not anymore. Ad astra per aspera, through hardship to the stars. Not the destination, the journey. The choice to keep moving forward even when everything says stop. The stubborn, defiant refusal to let the darkness win. The Airstream followed behind. Silver and bright, a rolling monument to second chances, to redemption, to the truth that broken things can be made whole if you are willing to do the work. And somewhere in that desert sky, Caleb liked to think Garrett was watching, proud, satisfied, knowing his mission was complete. The road continued. The story was not over, would never be over. There would always be more veterans, more battles, more work to do. But for the first time in 2 years, Caleb was ready for it. He was home.